Every year the video game industry throws a couple of curveballs. Out of absolutely nowhere, some developer will suddenly bust out some under-the-radar video game release that virtually nobody saw coming. For me personally, last year it was games like Frostpunk and Kingdom Come Deliverance, and this year I will be adding Remnant from the Ashes to that list of surprise titles. This game is a third-person survival action game set in a post-apocalyptic world, where the world has been overrun by some kind of weird fuckbeasts intent on killing you, killing your friends, and generally being rude and scaring the shit out of everyone. It's single player or co-op, although I played exclusively single player. You kill bad guys, customise your character, and try not to get killed too much. Thematically, it's very interesting. It's a bit Lovecraft, a bit sword and sorcery, a bit steampunk. It's basically Dungeons and Dragons set in the near future with swords, sorcery and guns. The fact I can't define it is a good thing. Most reviewers are making relentless comparisons to Dark Souls, a game I've never got around to playing because everyone keeps bitching and moaning about how horribly frustrating it is. In some ways, it's like a cross between the Division, third-person, open-plan areas, but it's structurally a linear story with checkpoints, the facility to double back, and a home base hub called Ward 13. The game is typified by extended periods of leisurely killing low to medium level trash mobs and exploring the map, punctuated by significantly harder boss fights. And let's not fuck around here. Some of the boss fights are a huge difficulty spike compared to everything in between them. There is no punishment for dying, which is frankly a fucking relief, because I died a lot on boss fights, and you pretty much loot ammo and consumables as you go, or refill ammo from a checkpoint crystal, and buy consumables from the vendors that you gradually unlock. There is not particularly much about any individual element of the game that is highly original, but the package as a whole is assembled in a way to create a solid little game. The costumes look great, the enemies look great, the gunplay is on point, and it's got a unique style about it. So what about functionality and performance? Key mapping was fine, but a fuck around. It was fine because it did not let you double bind. It was a fuck around because it didn't let you overwrite. So you had to hunt down the bind using the button you wanted to use, stick a dummy bind in there, go back and bind the original. It was a stamp on the cock which could have been avoided by simply letting you overwrite keybinds. There appears to be some confusion over the rebinding of the melee key. The general consensus was that the fire button and melee button are the same, and you will always accidentally melee if you fire whilst not aiming down sights. I found a solution to this by just rebinding the melee attack key, and it all worked just fine. Perhaps I'm missing something, but I didn't see a problem. I'm also a reflex ADS shooter, so for me, only being able to shoot when you're aiming down sights was no issue at all. There doesn't appear to be a field of view slider, so it felt a little tunnel visioned for me at times, but it wasn't like first-person shooters with a narrow field of vision, so it wasn't so bad I got motion sickness and yacked up in my fucking dustbin. It would have been nice though to have a field of view slider, although Tuxubuntu, a very kind redditor, has posted how you can edit the game script to force an FOV change. The character creation was a little bit limited, but it was good enough. Overall there was very little fuckery. Within a few minutes I had my keybind set up and the ugliest character I could make. So off I trotted. The game's got a few idiosyncrasies, like forcing you to use space for lots of random shit instead of the interact key, but, you know, overall it worked pretty much as intended. I've heard some stories that with certain specific keybind configurations it won't let you do it, but I have a weird setup, and it worked just fine for me. The only real performance issue I had was that the positional audio was definitely on the wank. It seemed to have zero verticality, sometimes the sound just came from the wrong location, and sometimes the sound mix didn't seem to adjust to cater for walls and distance. On top of this, some sound effects seemed entirely atmospheric and staged, and seemed to trigger when the player reached specific locations and had zero relationship to actual enemy NPCs. As a general guide, I found that if I heard the noise of monsters, that could only be relied upon to mean there were some monsters somewhere in the general vicinity. Overall, I thought the game looked very nice despite some of the criticisms levelled at it. My only one issue was that running at 60 FPS, I did get some screen tear and I just couldn't seem to get rid of it. Overall though, it worked pretty well. So what about the actual gameplay? You shoot, melee, kill, loot, level up, buy upgrades, die a lot, find hidden loots, kill more, die a lot more, sit down at fucking crystals which serve as checkpoints and fast travel points, kill more, die even more, rinse and fucking repeat. And I for one found this process to be quite enjoyable. You have to pick an archetype at the start, but it's really more of a choice of starting uniform and not a class system as such. You're not locked into anything. You're free to decide what gear to wear, upgrade and buy, which weapons you use, mods you install and where you invest your XP based trait points. So character customization is gradual and progress based. You can pretty much do anything you like and are not constrained by earlier choices and decisions, only by how much money, scrap and points you have available to spend. If you want more, you can go and grind them. On each playthrough, large portions of the maps are procedurally generated. Procedurally generated content can be a bit of a mixed bag. In some games, it's as dull as fuck. In others, like the Underground in The Division, it works like a charm. In Remnants, it not only works well, but means each playthrough is different. Even certain loot and encounters will be different. And yes, at any point you can re-roll the world environment, go back to the beginning and start over, keeping your gear and character progress. And you can do it all over again. I was recently on the subreddit and there are people at level 200 plus from repeat playthroughs already, maxing out skills and guns all the way. I think it's safe to say that there is some scope for repeat play here. I loved the steampunky, clunky as fuck bolted together weapons. There's not that much weapon variety, but the guns themselves were strangely satisfying. They just felt impactful and had a sense of style about them. I genuinely was having fun grinding mobs and looked forward to dashing back to base to gear up with my ill-gotten loots. As much as there are keybind issues and concerns with melee attacks, personally, it worked just fucking peachy for me. In fact, I loved the melee. Normally in games with an optional melee attack, I never fucking use it because I'm too lazy to be arsed with the extra button fuckery. Yeah, I'm that lazy. But for some reason, I both enjoy and use the melee attacks. It's probably a combination of two factors. It's fucking hefty and does a shit ton of damage when you melee. And also because of the waves of trash ads that constantly swarm you, sometimes your gun runs dry and going for a reload will cost you getting hit a few times. Far better to do a reflex instant melee attack and spare the attrition. The thing is, you do get healing options in the game, but they're quite precious. And I want to save those for big heals and emergencies. I don't want to piss away cooldowns on low level avoidable attrition. You see, it's not like you have heals on standard cooldowns. You have to recharge them at the checkpoints, or buy or loot potions. You're burning more than a cooldown when you waste a heal. So what's my evaluation of the game? Right out of the box, I was immediately made to feel like I had joined some epic battle between humanity and inhumanity. I felt part of a story. And this was all done very quickly, simply and effectively. Lots of reviewers are claiming that the story is shit. Shit compared to what other games exactly? Fallout 4? The story is, boo-hoo, I can't find my son. The Division? The story is, everyone got sniffles, so hipsters took over the world. Far Cry New Dawn? The story was, oh noes, there's a nuclear war and now everyone is a pink fucking idiot, and I wish I died in the fucking blast too. Compared to a lot of other games, some story about interdimensional fuckbeasts taking over the planet is downright fucking intelligent in my opinion. It does, however, go without saying that due to the constant references to the root and the tree monsters, there are a fuck ton of Groot memes already associated with this game. I find it quite cute, to be honest, but I resisted making any Groot jokes in this video out of a sense of professional duty. It's also worth noting that I recently watched a video guide to lots of hidden stuff in the game, which unlocked hidden areas, hidden loots, hidden quests, computer terminals containing backstory and notes, and the whole fucking game turned out to be richer and slightly less linear than I thought. Not immensely so, but nevertheless, it has layers I entirely missed whilst I was just powering through, trying to cap checkpoint after checkpoint. I gotta say, the difficulty when playing solo was a bit choppy. Most of the time I ticked along with very little effort, then I would hit a boss fight that was like a brick wall. I'm talking 10 plus wipes. On one occasion, it literally took me over 20 fucking attempts before I figured out the key to beating the mechanics. Then I aced it. But I'm not going to mention it took me over 20 tries, because then people will think I'm shit at video games. Which I am.
This isn't looking good.
I think the best way to think about it is this. It's a bit like World of Warcraft fight mechanics. Most of the game is like clearing the trash, then periodically you come to a boss, and it really is like a boss or a raid fight. There are frequently specific mechanics which you need to understand and counter, or you will just keep dying. Usually, once you figure it out, it's fine, but just like a hard raid boss, until that moment of clarity comes, you are going to get fucked repeatedly. The armour sets are a bit limited, the gun variation is a bit limited, but at least what they have is made well. Franchises like The Division have vastly more gear and weapons, I mean exponentially more gear and weapons, yet 90% of it is useless dumpster fodder. It's placeholder gear that is only there to pad out the loot tables. You will never ever fucking wear it, shoot it or equip it, and it's just there to give the illusion of there being more, like putting sawdust in your soup. Remnant from the Ashes might have a small amount of loot, but at least it's all got a fucking point, and manages to result in meaningful choices when you decide what to equip. Better and bigger games have failed at this task, often. And that is perhaps the hilarious irony of this game. Games like The Division have fucking seemingly endless loot variation, yet usually nearly everyone ends up using the same fucking gun. And in PvP, most people end up using pretty much the same fucking build, depending on the meta. Remnants from the Ashes has a fraction of the loot, but it's done so well that every weapon has a use and a purpose, and most gear items do too. There's always a situation where you think, right, I'll use that gun. In fact, I found myself swapping weapons and gear in and out depending on circumstances. In some situations, all-out DPS was priority, but on some bosses, mobility was the difference between life and death. The gunplay was really satisfying, and the stagger mechanics just amplified this sensation. I frequently found myself keeping multiple attackers at bay by using selective fire on the enemy to stagger them in turn and stop myself from being bum rushed by all the vicious little ankle-biting fucking minions. I would note that looking back, when I first started upgrading my gear, I fanned around a bit, buffing everything a little bit. With the benefit of hindsight, I should have just picked one weapon and buffed the shit out of it. Having everything 10% better is not as effective as having one big hitting gun. In many situations, I felt like having one weapon that hit like a truck would compensate heavily for my lack of dexterity. I think it is worth noting one thing about Remnants, which relates to playstyle, or should I say game style and difficulty spikes. Different types of games are suited to different types of gaming experience. If it's late and you want to chill, drink some whiskey and relax, some games are a better or worse fit. Even tired and fucking half-baked, you can wing it with some PvP and combat games by falling back on muscle memory, experience, map knowledge and a little bit of luck. In Remnants from the Ashes, certainly when you're new to the game, you will tick along just fine on the trash mobs, but when you hit a boss fight, unless you are a much better player than me, you are highly likely to need your wits about you. Suddenly it can go from casual play to fucking sudden death. You will need your wits, reflexes and real-time problem solving skills ready, or you will struggle to get past some of the bosses. This is not a flaw, it's just the way the game works. I really needed to concentrate on some of the boss fights, and they are not going to get any easier if it's 4 AM in the morning and you are shit-faced. Some of them went just fine and I aced them first time, but some of them seemed nearly bloody impossible until I worked out the precise mechanics and practiced many times. I'm just saying this because if you're looking for a chilled out gaming experience, you're going to get along just fine until you hit a difficult boss, and then you're going to be required to put your gaming head on. Maybe this is less of a deal playing in a group, maybe this isn't a deal at all if you're a much better player than me, but solo, a boss sometimes felt like a brick wall. So let's discuss the fuckery in this game. Well, I am very glad to say that this game is practically a fuckery-free product. If you pre-ordered, you did get a head start from the early access weekend where you kept your progress. However, this is not a PvP game, so there was technically no player advantage over other players. You get a few trinkets and knickknacks, some crafting materials, but overall it was fairly low key. Most importantly, there are no loot boxes, pay to win mechanics, in-game purchases of any kind. It was also cheap. All in, the pre-order price was £31. In fact, when it comes to fuckery, the only big downside to this game have been some reported bugs. Notably, a couple of the boss fights were a bit shady on console and bugged out, causing some players to get stuck. And on top of this, the last patch that came out a couple of days ago appears to have caused some issues on PS4, with some players reporting the game doesn't work, bugs, and even corrupt saves. Combined with the fact that pre-launch early access was shit-canned for PS4 players at the last minute, well, it's fair to say that the developer has some kind of issue with the PS4 side of things, and also that the PS4 players are frankly getting less of a good deal than the PC Master Race and the X-Boners. All this being said, I certainly would not avoid this game if you're on PS4. Gunfire Games have been on the case, posting on Twitter and the subreddit and trying to offer workarounds whilst they work on fixing the issues. So what are my tips and tricks for failing less at Remnants from the Ashes? First off, mentally prepare yourself for a few fuck-hard boss fights. Some will be piss easy and you will one-shot them. Most will be difficult but doable. But some will bring you close to fucking despair. Just accept the fact that some of the bosses will require many attempts before you crack them. But pay attention whilst you're trying. Most of the bosses give some kind of audio or visual cues before they do certain attacks or spawn ads. And if you pick up on these cues, some of the fights suddenly become easy. Just don't give up. Smash shit up. Anything wooden, smash it with a melee attack for scrap and iron. Even chairs, I only just discovered this, but pretty much anything made of wood in the environment can be smashed with your melee weapon and you can yield valuable resources. Be curious, be systematic. Definitely investigate every nook and cranny. Sometimes shiny loot spawn in the next room after a boss fight, or there's something shiny round that corner. Sweep and fucking clear the area every time. Sometimes you'll just find some awesome piece of loot hiding in a corner of a room somewhere behind a desk. Remember that the game is procedurally generated, so the loot is going to be in random places and it's going to be different every time you play through. Do not underestimate secondary stats. It is really tempting to just stack on damage and try and brute force every situation. However, on some of the bosses, and especially trying to beat a boss for the first time, staying in the fight is more important than outright damage. As many of you know, I am famous for my finely honed and well practiced running away skills, and this game put them through their paces. On some fights, being able to run away without gassing out and having a little extra health regen makes things much easier. Following from this point, on some bosses, it's really about managing the spawning trash ads. Sometimes you just have to nuke down the boss, but on some encounters it's about controlling the fight, keeping your distance, killing the ads, not fucking dying, hoovering up the ammo as it drops, and only then putting some damage down on the boss when the opportunity presents itself, and gently whittle down the boss. Dead mobs equal ammo drops. Dead mobs equals you don't get overrun. Dead mobs equals you don't fucking die. Sometimes fixating on DPSing the boss at the expense of tactics results in complete failure. This is classic World of Warcraft mechanics, and that is probably quite deliberate. Focus your upgrades. One powerful weapon is worth more than 3 slightly improved weapons. Being a jack of all trades is nice on trash. On bosses, you need at least one hard-hitting ranged weapon with a tricked out mod. Don't misunderstand me, 3 powerful weapons is even better, because ammo runs out real fast in some of the fights if you're not paying attention. However, if you spread your resources equally across all your gear and weapons, things might get painful and you won't really be good at anything. After your first playthrough, consider watching a secrets guide video. I only recently discovered all sorts of amazing shit in Ward 13 that I entirely overlooked. Then I discovered I could have got one of the best trinkets in the game by just talking to some fella and exhausting all of the speech options. The game has more secrets than you realise. It really is worth snooping around in this game, or watching a video from someone who already has. My overall conclusions about this game are very positive. It's £30 all in, and so far it's provided a vastly more interesting and enjoyable experience than Wokenstein Youngblood, at 75% of the cost. Think about that. The thing is, these days, a lot of AAA games claim they cost £60, but really you're forced to spend another 40 or 50 on all the DLC and or content expansions to appreciate the whole game. And they usually shovel microtransactions and fucking pedo caches down your throat. Remnants from the Ashes was £31 for the fucking pre-order, and I got one whole game that is fun to play, original and quite endearing. I think the important takeaway from this game is a lesson about video game releases and the video game community. I've seen a few people commenting that they can't believe the player reviews are so positive considering the game has flaws. Well, I reckon this is a positive thing. This game is a straight up product with no overselling or bullshit broken promises. It's not got microtransactions, and it's a below mid-range price point. Yes, there are some issues on console which they're trying to iron out, but overall it's a fairly square deal, and it's not sold out to become an Epic Game Store exclusive. Gamers seem very happy with this, and by this I mean an honest deal. It just goes to show that if a video game is a good deal and just trying to be good and not peddle bullshit loot boxes and microtransactions, People will put up with a few bugs and a few scaling issues and applaud the game. It works, it's cheap, and it's fun and original. I guess this game reminds me in a weird way of franchises like Jagged Alliance, Breach and Clear, and Void Bastards. They might not change the world, but I was very happy with my purchase, enjoyed playing them, and from time to time I will undoubtedly load them up again and take them for another spin. You know the sort of game, they sit in your library and whenever you're at a loss for a game to play, you bust them out and kill 4 hours and enjoy every minute of it. I genuinely thought this game had some kind of mojo that made it feel special. Playing this game made me feel like I was at the start of something. I don't know if they're going to expand this game with free DLC, paid DLC, a sequel or what, but I just got the feeling that there is something special about this game and it's not going away anytime soon. I really hope this game is a hit and a financial success for the developer. I hope they bring out new expansions and it sticks around. This game might have a few bugs and be limited in scope compared to some bigger titles, but what this game does, it does incredibly well, and despite its relative simplicity, it's also very replayable. I mean, chess only has 32 fucking pieces on the board, and people have played that game for 1,000 years. The procedurally generated levels means each playthrough is going to be unique. And on top of this game is as cheap as chips, with no fuckery. I am going to recommend this game, and then go straight back to playing it. But for now, good luck, and happy hunting.